Everything is fine here in Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Mike, joined today by Bogie, back for his second day on the podcast YouTube channel. Welcome back, Mr. Bogie. Just get the business elements out of the way really quick. So hit that subscribe button, hit that follow on our podcast platforms, like, subscribe, review, any and all of it. Any little thing that you can do greatly helps our podcast and our YouTube channel get out there amongst all the Star Wars channels that you are listening to. And we greatly appreciate any little thing that you can do. It doesn't take much, but it goes a long way. So, Mr. Bogie, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing well. Welcome. Yeah, thanks for welcoming back for week two,
Yeah,
of the season, I guess, or at least for my season
for the
of
Bogie
Star
season, week 2.
talking Star Wars. I changed my apparel. I'm not wearing Star Trek. I'm just wearing a Captain America, wearing a Captain America shirt. But
Hey, keeping it
um,
the theme of the nerds, that's
all
all.
the nerds.
I say I'm going the sports route because I know we've got a big game this weekend, so I'm rocking the Packers.
Yeah, we got a border battle this weekend.
Border battle for sure.
That'll be interesting to see the return of Aaron Jones. I think he's gonna run all over you guys, in my opinion.
He might. He very well could be. And maybe it'll be the return of Jordan Love after being injured for a couple of weeks. We'll see. And yeah, it's definitely been a surprise for the performance from the Vikings. And just interesting to see how the Packers do against the Vikings, who've been doing very well. 3
And
0
it's
on
been
the
a surprise
season.
for the Packers
Yeah.
with Jordan Love being out. If he does play, I kind of hope he does play because he'll be a little possibly not 100%, but
Yeah.
Malik Willis has looked pretty, at least under the offensive game plan,
Do
has
you know who
looked.
do you know who has the highest NFL rating for a QB or QB rating coming in the week 4?
I mean, is it Malik Willis?
It's Malik Willis.
I mean,
As crazy as that sounds, but I mean, there's a caveat to that a little bit too. I mean, they're playing it safe with him. He hasn't thrown too many passes, but he's done his job. So, and Sam Darnold on the Vikings has been definitely a surprise. So, I know when JJ went down, a lot of Vikings fans were disappointed and a little bit concerned on what Sam Darnold can do coming from the Jets, who wasn't looking that good, but so far he's been a different quarterback when he's got the weapons around him. So
and that's what I was telling a lot of Vikings fans when we signed him and didn't re-sign Kirk Cousins. I said, hey, this guy's got weapons finally in his arsenal that he's never had. When you look at Hawkinson, you look at Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, I can keep going down the list of like
yeah,
all these players that he has surrounding around him, a good offensive line. I thought he went into when he got drafted by the Jets, he went into a kind of a dumpster fire.
yeah.
So
Jets being Jets is always right.
yeah. And then having some time, I think between Carolina and San Francisco, where he kind of was the backup quarterback and got to kind of like finally sit down, digest, kind of take it in. And then when he came here, and I was like, well, Kevin O'Connell is going to escalate this guy to be what he should have been because he
Yeah.
was a third overall pick. So I was not worried when JJ McCarthy went down. I was like, well, but if Sam Darnold goes down,
And
I don't know.
and at least maybe a lot of people figured what I did is that JJ McCarthy wasn't going to be coming in until probably mid-season
If we were
if
struggling.
if you were struggling. So it's not like this would be a time that I mean Sam Darnold would have probably gotten his chance to shine either way. And then it would have made a little bit more of a conflict of okay, what are we actually going to do? Do we want to bring in JJ or are we going to take Sam Darnold and continue on with them, which is a good problem to have if
Yeah.
you're the Vikings. So I know we're kind of dominating with sports right now. We will get into Star Wars. Trust me. It's just so
Intro
what
time.
you might not know, Bogey, is everyone else on this podcast is a Packers fan. So you're the and
Lone Wolf.
Bogey is a Vikings fan, so he'll be the lone wolf on that. But it's good to get another perspective when it comes to another thing
Everyone's
that
gonna be
all
like,
of
"How
us.
dare you recruit a Vikings fan on this podcast?"
It's okay. A lot of our followers are coming from Australia and New Zealand that probably don't give as much attention to the American football by any means. No, but yeah. So we won't try to overwhelm you, Bogey, with Packer. But like I'm in Minnesota, so I already get enough Viking stuff coming my way. So now this is my platform. And I will shoot this reminder out to everyone that's following right now. So our chat is working at the moment. So if you've got any questions or anything, please bring it up. And I see we already have sports chat is very, very important. Someone already responded out there, and I'm like, yes, I completely agree. Sports chat is very important. Maybe not in the Star Wars, uh, broadcast or podcast, but hey, this
That's how
is
you get
about what we're passionate about, and we're passionate about it. So, and yes, we love American football too. So, see, told you that it's coming from out of our country that a lot of our followers are listening. Plus, it's late at night here, so it's probably a lot easier for someone from overseas to listen to us. But, so yeah, bring us your questions and everything as we talk through our conversation today. So, we didn't really have any agenda topics for today, so we're just kind of keeping it open-ended, just shooting the shit a little bit. It's kind of a slow news era for Star Wars. The only thing I did see is that Ubisoft announced that the sales or that the new video game is getting Outlaws is not at what they were looking for, so they're kind of not getting the sales they want. But I don't know. That might be a little bit of expected at this point, but we'll see. Maybe that will turn around. I still haven't purchased it. I know I will at some point, but just don't have the time yet. So we'll see. All
As
right,
we
Bo.
segue
Oh,
into like video games, that's the
yeah.
one question I did have because I know last week we talked about uh was it Jedi Survivor and or Fallen Order.
Jedi Fallen Order, and then the sequel to that is Jedi Survivor.
Yeah. And I haven't purchased Survivor, just hearing kind of what I've heard. And as we talked about it, Dustin talked about how it's similar
Fallen Order.
to Fallen Order, and there was elements of that game where I'm like, yeah, I'll wait till Black Friday and get it somewhat, if I can get it cheaper or something, then
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot. But we'll see. And but then Outlaw is something that I want to segue to another game down, later on this podcast. But is the reception been so bad? Is it just like kind of really too enclosed and not too? Everyone thought it would be like Star Wars, but GTA style, but it's not really that.
Yeah. And one of the things I saw was that that fans are already pushing for an update, which I didn't read specifically what that update was, but it could be to your point, like maybe that they want it to be more expansive than it actually is, because it's an open world. It is the Star Wars universe, so maybe fans are like, we can push the envelope a little bit more on this. We want more. We want it to be larger. So maybe that is an element to it, at least the part of the update that the fans are looking for.
Because that was something like I feel like Star Wars is like missing their mark on the video game content. Uh, I love Battlefront 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they came out and the newer systems were released, they came out with the newer Battlefront. But then all of a sudden you had like two or three maps that you were playing, and it was just only online. I love the story, kind of like the little side story when you're
Mm-hmm.
playing the clones or whatever. And then you have that, and it's like, what? It's just online, and it gets bored after like playing it for a week.
Yeah.
It's just repetitive, and that's why I was wondering if Outlaw kind of like teased you to think it would be a bigger universe, but it really isn't.
Yeah. Did you ever play so yeah, you had the original Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, and then in the more recent systems you had Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2. Did you ever play the second Battlefront as well?
Yes.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
there was a single player story, and that was some of the feedback they got after the first one was like there's no real like single player mode outside of like the tutorial or like practicing. So then they brought in like that story with about the Imperial. I'm forgetting her name, who started in the Empire and then transitioned over to the Rebels, but it was kind of short lived. There wasn't much to that story. At least like it could have been a lot more, in my opinion. I now transition to Fallen Order. That's well, not purely because there is a video game element to it, but that is more along the lines of a story. And that's where Survivor follows suit to that. I haven't been a Survivor. I'm only about a fifth or a quarter of the way through. But I think that's what I enjoy more about the Jedi series versus the Battlefront series. Battlefront, I can go back and play anytime. Now, like I can, if I'm getting the itch to like, oh, let me jump into an X-wing, or let me, be Luke Skywalker and own up on some people. That then I'll get back and I'll play that game. But compare that to Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order. I could play that probably once and be good. And what I've actually done, because so I liked on from time to time, I'll do like a Star Wars marathon where I'll watch all the movies, maybe not all the shows, but like certain elements of the shows in like chronological order. What I've done before is I've gone to YouTube when I get to the timeline of Jedi, like Fallen Order, and there's people on YouTube that have, pulled all the, cinematic scenes from the game and essentially make a movie out of it. So like instead of going back and play the game, I could just watch that movie off of YouTube and get what I'm looking for, because it's more the story that I enjoy. I love expanding on the lore and the stories of Star Wars. So that's usually what I'm looking for.
And I totally feel you. Same. I feel the same way. Some of these games kind of expand out, get more backstory or what's happening. Because we talked about last week things with like trying to get too stuck within the Skywalker
Mm-hmm.
timeline and that whole storyline. If we could branch out and kind of do other things, I think I feel Star Wars, whoever the uh, producers and who's doing all this, I feel like they're hitting more misses than hits on some of this content that's trying to reach out and not include any Skywalker type thing and just kind of do its own thing. And I feel like Outlaws is something I'm hearing is kind of a miss. I do like, again, Fallen Order, Survivor, because who's the main guy, the redhead?
Cal Kestis.
Yes. Is there rumors that because that I love how they were able to do like a animate like the perfect. He's not the not just only the voice actor, but
Right.
he's also they took the digital imaging of his face and he
Yeah.
was and it was has there been rumors? I keep hearing it, but is it confirmed? Will he ever show up in live action shows, whether it's Ahsoka or Mandalorian or something like that?
There's only speculation. There's nothing, but I I agree with you. Like there's a reason why they did that, and I think it was with the intent of like at some point bringing him in. Maybe it's along the lines of one of the movies that they have in the works, or I I hate to say movies in the works because they announce things and then they end up like getting canceled, a few months down the line. The only movie I think that is solidified that we'll get is that Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and maybe he'll show up somewhere in that. But if he did, he would be a lot older than what he is now. So it would have to be probably a show that falls somewhere between the prequels and the OT. Um, but I'm all for it. And again, there's a reason why they use his likeness in the CGI for the video game and not just his voice. So people are hoping, because a lot of people really like Cal Kestis. So we'll see. And I think I think whenever you have a Jedi that survived Order 66, people are automatically, or Star Wars fans for the most part, are going to want to know, okay, what's this guy's story, or what's this girl's story, and what is it down the road to? So that I want to know what happened to Cal Kestis, especially if we're playing video games and investing our time and money into a character. We want to see where he ends up. And uh, this game is supposed to be a trilogy, so maybe he won't make it out of the trilogy, and that answers the question for us. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, there are rumors and speculation, but nothing ever officially announced. It sounds like I'm gonna call you Ta. That's the person who's typing in the chat right now. Um, said he was just going to ask about Cal Kestis. So, do you think we'll ever see Cal Kestis in a live action Mr. Ta? Where was I going to go from that? Oh, you know, you're talking about missing the mark. Some of the writers and the recent content, in your opinion, might be missing the mark in the storytelling or whatnot. I was watching this interview that was with Stuart Beattie, who Disney brought in. Well, I should say he pitched his idea first about the Kenobi content that they want to release. So we know there's the Kenobi show, but before it was a show, it was going to be a movie. And to Stuart Beattie, it was going to be a trilogy. And he had this trilogy all written out. And this interview was him talking about it. And it seems like something that would, to your point, hit the mark. It sounded very thought out. This gentleman is a big Star Wars fan. He got into the movie writing industry because of Star Wars. He fell in love with it. And because he has that passion for it, he has this understanding for the characters and, has an idea of what the characters might do in certain situations, or if not certain characters, what the Star Wars universe would drive this person. Like, let's say the Force, how would the Force drive a person one direction or another direction? And it was super fascinating. So if you, Bogie, if you ever have the opportunity to watch, it's about 40 minutes long, and it's an interview with Stuart Beattie just talking about his original trilogy for the Ben Kenobi. And I wish we got those movies that he had an idea for versus the actual show. Now the show, there's elements that I really liked, and there's elements that I wasn't too fond of. So, and you've seen that show, right?
Which
Or
which
no?
show?
The
Which show?
Kenobi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course.
Yeah.
I'm Ben Kenobi over here.
Yeah, right. You have to watch it. Or as I said, Ben Ken Bogey. That's
Yeah, Ken
your
Bogie.
Ben Ken Bogey. But so I, I really hope that they can bring that element back of passionate writers for the content, because I don't know if it was Disney or some of the leadership within Lucasfilm or Disney, but talking about how, and I get it, Star Wars, they want to expand Star Wars to other fans. There's other people that have stories that they want to share about Star Wars. Sure, I understand that. But they also mentioned, like, oh, we want to bring in someone who's never watched Star Wars so we can get original thought and original content. And it's like, I don't know if that works when you're dealing with something that's as big and as important to people as Star Wars. I get what you're trying to do, but then you're going to get certain reception like what you did with the Acolyte. So, what are your thoughts on that, Bogey?
No, I totally agree. I hope they can create more content, but do it in the right way. Like I said, they're missing opportunities when it comes to a platform of video games and like Star Wars lore of going out there. When we were talking last week about Worlds Between Worlds, it took me a second, but then I realized, yeah, that was in the Ahsoka series, but it was also in Fallen Order. It was mentioned, and kind of like that outer rim area of space, and it's kind of like they're so a lot of the content is so concentrated on like around Coruscant and like the surrounding planets and everything, where it's like, can we branch out? Like we talked Balin Skull last week, that who knows if they're gonna find a replacement, and if we're gonna see where he goes off. And for me, like that, I love, as much as the animation is awesome, I will always like live action more.
Yeah,
And if we can explore that world, whether and then also in video games too. So
yeah,
it just seems like there's hit or miss, and that's why I say Outlaws, is that kind of a miss, or is it has potential? I just felt like for uh the one game or recent games, they like come out with so limited amount, and then you have to buy like the packages for, okay, it costs $60, and then next, we're paying another $20 for an
Yeah,
expansion, paying
expansion.
another $20 for another expansion. It's like
Yeah,
you don't feel like you got a full game out of it.
right.
So that's where I feel like I'm sure it's frustrating a lot of Star Wars fans.
Yeah. And to your point, when you said you would always prefer live action, or maybe not prefer, but just you'll gravitate more to the live action. I will even expand that out a little more because I agree. Um, and I would even say I gravitate more towards feature films over shows because in my eyes, that's where Star Wars has always belonged. That's where it was created, and that's where it belongs. Not to say you can't have the shows, but like you also have to keep having these major impactful movies that brings people to the theater. And maybe it's just more geared towards, the older generations that grew up watching them in theaters because there's that, nostalgia, and there's, reminiscing of the times of old when you would go to the theater and watch Star Wars and you see that crawl going up the big screen. Like that's where I feel Star Wars belongs. And I'm really looking forward to getting at some point a feature film again that we can get a bucket of popcorn, grab the biggest soda that no one ever needs, and just sit and watch a movie for 2 to 3 hours. Like I want to do that again with Star Wars, and not just like re-releases of content or movies that have already been released. So
Yeah, that's what it seems like a lot of content nowadays that are just like circling back to things that was their kind of their gold mine per se.
yeah.
And we talked about that last week. Keep hitting the Skywalker saga, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, can we just find something else? And I think they did really good. And I hope John Favreau and Dave Filoni they keep continuing what they're doing because I think they're doing great,
Mm-hmm.
especially with Mandalorian. Have them make a movie.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. Make a
Yeah.
movie.
Well, and we're going to get that wish once the Mandalorian Grogu movie comes out. So I am excited to see. I'm nervous and excited
Yeah, I totally
because
get it.
like the Mandalorian again is a show. Will it live up to its name now being a movie? And it's I feel like what they're doing is so much from the Marvel universe, where it's like you've got all these side superheroes and side shows, and they come together in these Avengers movies. And I feel like you've got the Mandalorian show, you've got the Book of Boba Fett show, you've got the
Chris
Ahsoka
Mota.
show, and now they're all going to verge into this movie. And not only that, but you're bringing in like Luke Skywalker in some of the movies. Um, you're bringing in Hayden Christensen. So like, where is this? Is this all going to be brought together in this Mando and Grogu movie, or is Mando and Grogu movie just going to be about Mando and Grogu? So it's like, and it makes me nervous when we bring in Luke Skywalker and stuff like that because again, there's so many people that are super passionate about certain characters, and if you do them wrong, you're going to hear about it. So, like we've seen in sequel trilogies. So,
Yep.
hope hopefully it gets done right. But right now, Favreau and Filoni do have the most trust out of me. But I mean, Tony Gilroy, who did Andor, I can't wait for season 2 of that because that was probably the best show we've gotten so far.
I I take that. Yeah, I take that back. Outside of like Mandalorian, I think some of the ones they had their moments that were great, but a lot of moments where they fell flat. But Andor, that was something else because I loved um the one movie
Rogue One,
Rogue One where now I'm blanking on his name, the character and the
Andor, Cassian Andor.
yeah, Cassian. That's what I was
Yep,
trying to think of his first name. His whole story arc, and I was like, wow, and like maybe I like it because it has that darker vibe,
sure.
more adult theme, and then they're in prison, and then they're trying to like a prison break and all that kind of stuff, and it really captivated me on what's going to happen next, and all of a sudden it ends with a cliffhanger, and you're like, dang it, gotta wait till next week. But that's the kind of stuff I like to have is
Yep.
content where you look forward to the next week. And especially I think it came out on Wednesdays, I think. And it was just like just help break up the week to like look forward for something midweek to watch. So yeah, I hope they have more stuff like that. Or 'cause, to me, some shows you can tell it's a show, but
Mm.
Andor looked like movie quality,
Yep.
if that makes sense.
Well,
Whereas like it could have been like a two-parter movie or something.
and there's many elements that makes it feel like a movie. It's not just how it looks. It's also the writing. The writing was very well done. The casting, I mean, you have some of the best actors and actresses in that. I mean, what's his name that does Gollum and
Yeah, Sudeikis. Is it
yeah, Andy
Andy
Circus.
Circus? Yes, yeah, that's what. Yep.
Um, I mean, the guy is amazing, and he did. Um, my mind is spacing now. What's his name from the sequel trilogy? The main not the main baddie, not
I mean, he played Alfred in the new Batman movie.
yeah,
And then
Snoke is who is I'm thinking of.
oh yeah, Snoke. Yeah,
So he's got two characters that he
technically in
portrays
Star Wars. Yeah.
in Star Wars, one CGI and one.
He's got a lot of toes dipping in different in
Yeah,
Marvel. In Marvel, he was that one weapons dealer guy.
yeah, the guy who loses his arm and
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
So he's
He's
got a lot.
so good.
He's just a talented actor.
Yeah. Um, but the acting, the writing, everything was perfect. And that's what they did right with that show. Like they concentrated on those elements. And like if we want a good show, that's what we have to put first. And then, everything else will come later. So when you have those things, then it's going to be a success. And I think a lot of people, a lot of Star Wars fans really liked that show and definitely really loved the movie Rogue One. I think everyone would say that was probably not I won't say everyone, I shouldn't generalize like that, but I feel like a lot of the fan base would say that was the best Disney created Star Wars movie. Whether it's through the sequel, trilogy, Rogue One, or Solo, people tend to lean towards Rogue One.
And like the show or the movie, yeah, Rogue One, everyone likes, and I feel like there was moments that were stolen. Again, we got to include the Skywalker. So you had Darth Vader
Yeah.
in a couple scenes, but they did it right, and it
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah, and it
And
was
I
in a
think they did
moment
it,
that makes sense.
but they did it just right where he was barely in it. It was just sprinkled in there. And
Yep.
then, but the rest of the movie was following everybody else in this crew. K2SO, I love that droid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Is that's Sudeikis, right? Who voiced him? What's that guy's name? I gotta look it up. Otherwise it's gonna
It was
bug
a
me.
comedian, I think.
Yeah, he's in do you ever see the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger?
Yeah, I'm like I knew Heath Ledger. I'm trying to think of who else was in that movie.
So you had Heath Ledger, you had the guy who portrays Vision in Marvel, because he's the like announcer guy. Um, oh, Alan Tudyk.
Oh, okay.
Um, do you recall who he is from
Not
A Knight's Tale?
because it's been so long since I've seen Night's Tale. I wasn't like, was it entertaining? Sure. Have I seen it more than once? No.
It is kind of weird that they used modern music in like a medieval show because they had like we will rock you.
Yep.
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany. Okay. Yep. Okay.
So he was the announcer guy for Heath Ledger when
When
they
they
when they
when they
first come across him, he's like naked because he was robbed of everything because he
that's
owed
right.
people
That's
money
right.
or something like that.
That's
But
right.
um no, a good movie. And Heath Ledger, man, I miss that guy.
Can you imagine what his career would be if he when we talk about all these people that you were saying last week, they have a stellar performance and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, out of the blue, they're gone.
talk about finding like not a niche, but like a role that you just are all of a sudden an expert in. It's like okay, because I would have never pictured Heath Ledger as a bad guy in movies before I saw Batman, and then it's like, okay, this is the role you belong in, and so
Yeah.
just
And that's one
crazy.
of my all-time favorite movies all time. Not to get out of Star Wars here, the topics, but uh The Dark Knight, that performance, and I heard what he did, locking himself in his, acting trailer and just getting into that psyche and then coming out and be like, okay, we're ready to roll.
Yeah,
And he just performed his ass off.
and it's interesting that Jack Nicholson, right? That's who played the
Yep.
Joker.
In the first one,
Or, yeah, in
the
the
very
first one,
original Batman. Yeah.
how he warned Heath Ledger what getting into character for this character can do for you mentally. So just kind of fascinating.
And you hear that a lot more stories like that, which is kind of like you watch out for some of these characters. You look at like the show, the guy that plays in so many shows, but uh he was the speedster in the X-Men movies, but he played
Oh,
Dahmer, but he played Dahmer
oh
in
yeah,
the Netflix series, and everyone's like, "Yeah, make sure his mental health's okay," because
yeah.
that was quite the performance on his part. Like these,
For the show Dahmer,
yeah,
oh, he did an excellent job of portraying Dahmer. Like, if he just
like,
walked by me like that, dressed in character, I'd be like, "That's Dahmer, man." It's
but I
creepy.
mean, not to just point just him out, but
Right.
single it. But there's other actors that just they kill it, but you wonder what kind of mental focus they had to be in to kind of like transform that kind of mentality to portray a specific character, especially whatever script they've been given to. That's that's a tough because I growing up, I would talk to other movie fans and talk about you have other characters that seem like they play like the same person in every movie. One that comes to mind, I guess, outside of Scarf, I think was it, yeah, Scarface. It was El Pacino. Like every movie you watch, he seems like the same person. There's no change. When you say Heath Ledger, you
Yeah.
see him in The Patriot, you see him in Nice, and then you see him in Dark Knight, and you're like, wow, this guy's got a lot of dynamics to his how he can act, and
Yeah.
that's a and it's just sucks that we lose characters like that, and
Yep.
I'm still upset that we lost the I can't think of the guy offhand, but the guy that plays Balin's goal, I thought he killed that performance.
Yeah. I gotta. Um. I want to look him up because I just want to make sure I do him justice. Ray Stevenson. That's right.
Yeah, Ray Stevenson and some of the movies he's been in.
He's in Thor. He's in what other stuff? He's been in a lot of things.
he's in the other guys.
Oh yeah, he is.
He's one of like the bodyguards. And
Yeah,
he goes like, "There's two things I love about a woman," and then one of them he's like, "And then the dimples above the buttocks or whatever." Like he was just like, it's like, other guys. Just I don't know where whoever wrote that script for that movie, or if it was all improv, maybe a combination of both. That movie was hilarious.
it was. Yeah. So to your point though, like talk about a range of acting that certain actors can portray. It's
Yep,
unbelievable. And you mentioned The Patriot for Heath Ledger. That's a great movie, and he does an awesome job in that as well.
I was so shocked
Mhm.
in that
So
that movie had so many twists and turns of who's living, who's dying, and it
so
just
devastating. That
I
church
know
scene, that
I think it
church,
reflected accurately what the Revolutionary War was all about.
all is fair in love and war, and man, they were going to all the extremes to, I mean, it was a different time then. Some would argue that certain elements still exist today, but
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not one of those. I am one of those. And for the record, I'm a historian. Like that's what I studied growing up and in college and everything. History and anthropology major. As bad as everyone might think times are now, it's a lot better than what it was. I mean, just go back to the Roman times and like the
oh God,
entertainment
yeah,
was actually like throwing people in the rings and Colosseum and other. arenas just for seeing them die and everything. And
Yep.
so we
In enjoyment too for people
right
that,
people cheering for it in the audience, like,
yeah.
oh, who wants some concession food while you're watching people die? Like, oh, what? It's like, so we have got a long way to go yet. There's still a lot of opportunity our society has, but we've progressed quite a bit. Um, just to kind of reel us back into Star Wars. So we were talking about people who portray these certain roles and try to fit into a certain mindset for a character, like Heath Ledger did for the Joker, and Jack Nicholson warning him about it. Like, do you see any of that in Star Wars, or is there a certain character you would like to see brought out like that? Like, the closest thing I can think of is an Anakin Skywalker or a Hayden Christensen portraying like Anakin Skywalker to like a Darth Vader. Um, and I will say his portrayal as both in the Ahsoka show is extremely powerful. Like, I think that's very representative of the talent that he has, and was almost, pigeonholed when he was in the prequels, because, as much as praise as we give George Lucas, because he is the godfather to all of Star Wars, the one thing I don't think he was the greatest at was um communicating with his actors and actresses on how they want to be portrayed. Like, I don't think he really allowed them to fit the characters on their own. He really kept them like in line for how he envisioned the characters to be. And seeing Anakin portrayed by Hayden Christensen in the Ahsoka show was like, dude, this guy is amazing as this character. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, when you bring up like Star Wars characters, I would say for sure Christensen. When you saw him in the prequels, and then right now, when you guys suggested last week that I start watching the Clone Wars series, granted, it's not. I don't believe it's voiced by Christensen, is it?
No, no, it's
Okay.
not.
Um, but then seeing him in the Ahsoka, like his dynamic, but I wonder if I don't know if I think there was a lot of hate for Attack of the Clones, the second one.
Sure.
And
There's a
person
lot of hate for all the prequels.
and personally, like that's the one movie where I need to fast forward, and it's fast forwarding through all like the cheesy love story
Sure.
part
Sure.
where I'm like, I don't, it's not nice. It's not for me.
Sure.
To me, I'm like, that's not real life. You don't, you, yeah,
As we talk about on the show a lot, suspension of disbelief. Like, suspension of disbelief is important. Like, if you can't picture what you're watching to be real, it's harder to get attached to it.
yeah, yep, totally agree. And when we finally, at least in Attack of the Clones, when you could tell they made an adjustment in Revenge of the Sith,
Oh,
the third
sure.
one. You could tell they made an adjustment, but in the second one, there was just like segments where it's like, okay, I'm gonna see this for the next 20 minutes. Like fast forward. Like
Yeah.
I want to get to the main topic of the war or the beginning of the war.
Yeah.
Um, but one other so I think that might have messed up his acting career possibly because everyone's
Sure.
got that grudge and
Yeah.
no one can look past that. So
Yeah.
maybe a lot of producers and directors were kind of like, can someone fit? I mean, he made a few movies afterwards, but I think
Yeah.
Hayden Christensen's been kind of on the and whether I don't know if it was his choice to kind of like, yeah, maybe I'm done acting and found something else. Granted, he's been back with Ahsoka and the Kenobi series,
Yeah.
but is he just stuck doing that role only? That a lot of actors fall into that kind of trap. I mean, you can look at like, I don't know, William Shatner. I'm a Star Trek fan. William Shatner being Star Trek, Captain Kirk. I don't know if he really did anything significant after Star Trek.
Outside of like little cameos and other things.
Can't, yeah, yeah. Um, but one actor pointing right here, Mark Hamill. That guy had a career
Oh yeah.
because after Star Wars, he was the voice of the Joker
Oh yeah.
in the animated series, and he
And
continued
video
that.
games.
and all the video games, and he continued that for the longest time. And the guy that voiced Batman, them two were like buddies, and just their whole probably voicing Joker and Batman between those two, they probably had at least 30 years worth of content of that they were working together on. So that's one character, but other characters I don't know that comes straight to mind that outside of Star Wars that they like their career kind of took off. I mean, is there anyone that you can think of that I'm not thinking of?
Well, I know. I mean, there's
Oh,
also
Ewan McGregor.
you. Oh, that's a good one. I mean Harrison Ford,
Oh, yeah, Harrison Ford. So now here
but
I'm
I
kicked
think
off
he
the
was
show.
no, 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 no.
I'm still in detention
You're in
block.
the your cell. But I think it was more the Indiana Jones movies really that really pushed his career forward. I mean, sure, Star Wars definitely helped, but he was more of a side character in this show, and one that many people fell in love with, obviously. But George Lucas was like in love with Harrison Ford, and I know Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die off in the original trilogy at some point.
Yeah, I
But
heard that too. I think it was
George
supposed to be
Lucas
in the
wanted to
second
keep
one.
him in. So like George Lucas just had this love for Harrison Ford it so much that I'm gonna make a new movie franchise, Indiana Jones, and which I remember this was one of the questions from um the quiz at trivia where what was the name of George Lucas's dog?
Dog.
Yeah,
It was it
Indy.
was Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana. um, but yeah, I think where you get a lot of that, where we're talking about Heath Ledger role for Bat or for the Joker, it tends to be more villainous characters where you see that kind of dedication for a certain role. Um, so I don't know. My mind keeps bringing to light Revan, the character Revan. I feel like I would love to see Old Republic, Revan be brought in and have some kind of casting for him that would fit like that. I know a lot of people want Keanu Reeves as Revan in some kind of movie, but I don't know. He already has his um kind of niche character now. I
And
don't know if
I think he's very picky on roles that
yeah. I know
he's
he
got
wants
his
to do Star Wars, but I don't know if he do
he's
Revan.
as far as I've been told or read or whatever heard. I mean, he's someone that's in his late in his career because I don't know how old he's got to be in his 50s or older than that. He's got to look at the script
Yeah.
and you got to sell him. I think when he saw, for example, like John Wick, he saw the first
Yeah.
script and he was like, "Oh, I'm fully on board. I could portray this character." Because I think when you bring up Keanu Reeves, he's another person that really needs to see the script and know, can I sell the audience? Can I be this guy that the script is telling me? Because I mean, the script will have the words that you're going to say, but the script also gives more of like what your persona should be, what your facial reactions or conversations. Are you having a soft? Are you soft? Are you hard? Are you kind of like what kind of character are you trying to be?
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. I really don't know if Keanu Reeves will ever end up with a
A
Star
major Star
Wars.
Wars role.
Yeah,
He might do like a little cameo, like you see some people do a stormtrooper or you know a imperial officer or something like that. Um, but I think another one that had good potential, we just didn't get enough, and probably won't get any more because his character died off. Was Adam Driver for Kylo Ren? Like there was potential there. There was potential. I think to me he was one of the most fascinating characters of the sequel trilogy. But I don't know. There's a lot of characters in those movies that just didn't get the justice that they deserved, in my opinion.
you really enjoyed Adam Driver.
I did.
I
You didn't?
the
You're like,
first
I'm gonna disagree with you here.
the first first argument here, first
Yeah.
movie, yeah, he was his there he had I guess moments where it was back and forth where turning into like a little baby, just taking his lightsaber out and just bashing on everything.
Sure.
And it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess you're trying to create something new in the Star Wars lore. Like someone can lose their temper, especially if on the dark side.
Yeah.
They have that anger. Um, but I don't know. He never sold me. And I guess just an actor in general.
Yeah.
He's I've never of the films I've seen him in have not been my favorite. So
Yeah.
that I mean that's to each their own opinion. That's just he's never sold me on some of the
Hey,
acting.
and that's totally fine. And I mean, by no means do I want to see like a shirtless Kylo Ren. Like I can go without that. Um, but I don't know. And I think when I picture him, I more picture him from the Rise of Skywalker movie when I think of his character. And not I mean, Rise of Skywalker is probably one of my, I would put that at the bottom towards the lower end of my totem pole of favorite movies of Star Wars. But I when I say there's something there, like that story arc for that character, there is something there. Um, and I really started to see glimpses of it in the Rise of Skywalker. Not so much in the first two films of that trilogy, but because I agree, like he was definitely like a whiny little brat. But then again, like so was Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. Like, what's that flashing button? And Harrison Ford's like, shut up, kid, just sit down. Like, there are definitely elements of that for Mark Hamill in the original trilogy, and then the way he progressed to be the Luke Skywalker that he was by the end of the original trilogy. I'm thinking of him walking up to Jabba's palace and his like black Jedi attire and just a completely different character at that point. Like that's what I'm more referring to when I see like what that potential was for that character. And I thought Adam Driver did a good job, in my opinion. I know you probably disagree on this, but just the development of going from that whiny little like temper tantrum person to a person that kills his dad and then ends up, even though he killed his dad, turning against everything he had done to essentially do the right thing. So again, there's something that was there that really caught my attention that has potential, but just never truly fruited into what it could have been, in my opinion.
Yeah, which I totally agree. I think that might have been one of the reasons why like I said, Kylo Ren was really good in the that first movie, but when he killed Han Solo, I that really
Ruined it
I
for
don't
you?
know. I felt that that shook everyone. I get it. You want that impact towards the end of there's stakes at hands. You can't have all the characters survive at the end of every big battle. So I get it. And maybe Han Solo for the longest time, like you said, in the OT series, that he was supposed to die, I think, in Empire Strikes Back, I think, or the
Yeah, something like that.
one of those. So I'm sure he was kind of done, but again, it's like missing that opportunity that we talked about last week where you kill off a character, but you never, how did you not have a moment to get all th like at least three of the Leia,
Yeah.
Luke, and Han Solo all in one scene? I think would have been
That is just, in my
a missed
opinion, a sin.
opportunity.
A movie sin. I will never forgive them for that.
Yeah.
And it's like it's an opportunity we'll never have again because, you know, uh RIP Carrie Fisher. And I'm sorry, I'm still just so frustrated that they never brought all three of them together. It's a
But I
sensitive
mean,
point to me.
that the later trilogy is, I don't, I don't, I'd like the first one a little bit, but it was kind of a remake of New Hope in a larger scale.
You don't have to be ginger about anything. You can
But
lay
you
out
know,
your total I mean, we you know, of the people on detention block, we have a wide range of different opinions on it, and there are individuals who completely despise the sequel trilogy for the things that they did to certain characters like Luke Skywalker, you know, a flipping 180 on what he was and what he
yeah,
meant. So you don't have to remember we're uncensored. Just let loose with your
Just let
thoughts
it
or
out. Just let
feelings.
it
Like
out.
if you hate those movies, that's okay. That doesn't I I know there's a lot of toxic fans, a lot of toxicity out there on people telling you what you should think or what you shouldn't think, what makes you a fan, what doesn't make you a fan. In reality, liking or not liking something from Star Wars doesn't make you or not make you a fan. Your
Yeah.
fanship comes from the term fanatic, which means like you're over passionate about something. So you can be over passionate about Star Wars and not like something because you feel like there's an expectation. And if those expectations aren't met, then you might
Yeah.
not
No,
like it. And I
yeah.
know everyone says like you shouldn't go into a movie with expectations. Sure, I agree. An ideal situation in a utopia, you should not go into movies with expectations. But to tell yourself that you don't, like
Don't kid
everyone,
yourself.
don't kid yourself. When you go, if you know anything about a movie, what do you think trailers are supposed to do? They're supposed to like set an expectation for you. Like you're going to have opinions about something before you go into it, whether you like it or not, or whether you admit to it or not.
Which is another thing. Like I know people that I watch online, YouTube that have talk about movies because just in general, I love movies. I just something that maybe at some point we'll have my own content of just reviewing movies.
Yeah.
Um, but they talk about how trailers nowadays just they either they get your expectations up here and then the movie just falls flat because the trailer revealed all the good stuff
Mm-hmm.
and all the other stuff that you watch the movie and you're like, okay, probably should have just watched the trailer and I've been content. There's movies like that, and
Yeah.
I feel like Star Wars did that in the last three movies. They had some kick-ass trailers. I'm like, okay, I'm excited. What's going to happen? And then I watch the movie, and I'm like, well, I didn't get anything. I just it just fell flat. Like so. Anyways, back to yeah, whatever. Back to you, Mudge. What
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, I mean, trailers will set a tone. And I mean, what I've talked to a lot when it comes to movies and the movies I like, I feel like the soundtrack plays a huge role in it.
oh oh
And trailers know how to bring in the soundtrack. That like that's probably the main thing that gets you the feels when you're watching a like you're just getting clips of things that you have no idea what's going to happen, but you have the soundtrack behind it that sets like a feeling that you're supposed to have while you're watching it. Um, yeah, you go back and you watch those sequel trilogy trailers, and man, they bring in like that original music. I mean, there was one that had didn't one of them have the or maybe it was a trailer for a show, the Duel of Fates. Maybe that was the Kenobi show.
I think it was Kenobi. Yeah,
Had the Duel
but
of
no, I
Fates
totally
soundtrack,
get.
and you're like, I can't wait to watch this. Like, this has got to be good. And then like the show has its good and bad parts, but yeah, there's tones that trailers set, and a lot of that comes from the soundtracks.
And I don't know if that circles around to Disney and what they do because they did that a lot with like Marvel too. When you see a trailer and it like had like a soundtrack song or whatever, and you're like kind of like maybe altered a little bit, but it sucked you in, and you're like, oh, this is good. You get goosebumps, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't wait to see this. They never have that actual song in the movie though.
Right. Right.
But it sucks you in, and I think Disney does a pretty good job at marketing with their trailers because they probably, they got shit ton of money to do it. But
Disney
when
didn't
it
get to
comes to
where
the
they
actual
are without
production,
knowing what they're doing.
yeah, when it comes to the actual production of the movie and go and see it, and you're like, "Eh, I'm gonna watch the trailer again because the movie sucked. But
Yeah.
I think the trailer was better than the movie.
I want to watch the hype film more than I want to watch the actual film.
Right.
No, it's so true though. Um, well, I know before we got on, you were talking about you actually started watching Clone Wars, the animated show, and you got through a couple of the episodes
Three
after three
episodes.
episodes. So I figured give you a little time to talk about that. I think you alluded to you might have had questions or something like that. So
Um, because I kind of want to segue over to old games I got into. I know
Hmm.
we talked some of the recent content games that
Yeah.
have been released, but some of the old games. And one of the characters, I know I talked last week about how one of the top characters in Star Wars I love is Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Um, but another character I really wanted more backstory, because I played him in a game, was Plo Koon. And through the first three episodes, I got more content of Plo Koon, and I've actually kind of enjoyed it. The only thing I really don't agree with is he had a blue lightsaber. He's supposed to have a yellow lightsaber or a gold lightsaber.
There
Because
you go.
what I'm referencing back is when I got into Star Wars, loosely knowing the original trilogy, it was Phantom Menace, watching it from beginning to end and getting sucked in. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to know all this other Star Wars content. And I played Jedi Power Battles. You ever play
Okay.
that?
No, I haven't, but we had way early on in our podcast, we had so we used to do brackets of like, well, for this one, we just put one video game against another video game. We seeded all the different video games based off of popularity, and we had a bracket to figure out like what was the greatest Star Wars video game of all time. And that video game was one of them in there. So that's the
Oh, it
only.
made it to like the final four or
No,
whatever.
it didn't make it that far.
Oh man.
But I remember that was one of the participants in like the 16 games or something that. So it was whatever number we used, it was like if I said 16, it was in the top 16, but
But yeah, that was like, if for your viewers watched last week's episode, I talked about going to video updates. Got to bring
that's
that up again. And it
not
was
even
always one of
Blockbuster, not even Hollywood Video.
those. Whenever my parents or my dad would take me and my sister to video update, it was like, it was a good thing having a twin sister. It's like, one of you guys can get a movie, one of you guys get a game, and we would, like, me and my sister would tag team, like, okay, which game do we both want to play, and which movie do we both want to watch?
Very strategic.
Yeah. Versus if you were by yourself, you'd only get one choice, and I'm sure I could persuade multiple times. My dad would be like, "Oh, whatever, I'll get."
Right.
Anyways, I think I rented Jedi Power Battles so many times on the PlayStation 1. Probably played that game numerous times from beginning to end. And they had, like, I think four characters. It was, you could play as, no, five characters. You could play as Obi-Wan, you can play as Qui-Gon Jinn, then you can play as Plo Koon, then you can play as Mace Windu, and then the one woman Jedi that got killed in the third one. Is it Adi Gali? She looks like Ahsoka, but not Ahsoka. If you know what
Oh
I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
She's one
yeah.
of the Jedis when Order 66 goes
Yeah,
in,
she gets killed in our. Yeah,
and they
I know who
don't
you're
just
talking about.
kill her, they just unload everything. You know what
Mhm.
the scene I'm talking about?
Yep, yep.
So I love that game, but in that game, Plo Koon had a gold lightsaber, gold or yellow, whatever.
Okay,
Bad quality, but I'd play with him. I'd play as him quite often.
okay.
And then only to find out, I'm like, this guy's not even in the movie. Or you did see it. You see him in the Jedi Council
Yeah,
when they're interviewing little Anakin. That's the only time you kind of see him. But I was like, this guy's pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, I start seeing more and more content throughout the movies. And then all of a sudden, yeah, Star Wars 3, he's the one flying his Jedi starship, and then he gets shot down. And I was like,
yep.
oh no.
Well, you'll be happy to know that you get a lot of Plo Koon in the Clone Wars. So maybe that will
So that's
draw
really
your
getting
interest a little more.
That's
So
get me really excited because, like I said, the first three episodes he's been quite, or at least the first or second or third episode he's been quite involved.
yeah.
And I don't know what kind of species is he? Because, like, in the second
Oh,
episode, he, like, jumps out and he's like, I can tolerate the pressure of space for so long or something, but I can jump out there. Like, what can
a,
he?
a Keldor. So that's his species is a Keldor from Doran. Um, sorry, what was your question?
Oh, in the second episode, he was with the stormtroopers and they had like a pod trapper looking for them, or
Yep,
pod hunter.
yep.
And he's like, we're gonna fight them. He's like, get your helmets on. They're like, what about you, master? And he goes, I can tolerate the vacuum of space for. So it was like his species can do that. I was
Mhm.
kind of threw me off a little bit, but I don't know
Yeah.
if there's more. more to come on that, or if that was just a season one kind of like just
Yeah.
throw that in there, but we'll never explain it
It
later.
it was probably more of a like, we need to make this work, so we're going to say that their species
Okay.
can do that. Because like I don't know. I mean, maybe in the books there's more insight on that, but I mean, and I know like you always see him, he's wearing that mask.
Yep.
So like our normal atmosphere or normal like Earth or whatever, or Coruscant will use in universe for Star Wars, like he can't breathe the air. So no different than like any other, like a human species going to a planet that doesn't have oxygen, we would have to have a mask. That's how he is for the. But speaking of that mask thing, I don't know if you ever saw.
In Andor.
Oh, so you did see it.
Yes. Yes, I saw that.
Some of
I
my
was
favorite
like,
scenes were when they were in his shop, because I would be like,
oh,
okay,
Easter egg,
Easter
Easter
eggs,
egg,
Easter egg.
Easter egg. Yep. Yep. No, I totally, yep. Yep.
All right, good job. So Plo Koon is definitely, if you notice that, then Plo Koon definitely means a lot to you.
So maybe at some point I'll get out of detention block here
No,
at
you're
some
out
point.
of detention. I mean, if you're on a second episode, you're in. But and this won't spoil anything, but Plo Koon is more of, so Anakin is obviously Ahsoka's master, like teacher. Plo Koon kind of plays a little bit of a father figure to
hmm
Ahsoka. She definitely looks up to him, and that will play on even more as you progress through the seasons. Um,
I'm excited to see that because I can see the connection and whatever. Maybe I'll get more into her, more of her backstory. But she said Plo Koon was the one that found her and
yeah,
brought her into like the Jedi family, and
yeah,
so I'm excited to see kind of that where that goes. So
yeah. You'll definitely get more Plo Koon throughout the seasons, and definitely gain more of an understanding and an appreciation for his character. And that's what I love about both the Clone Wars and Rebels. They give appreciation to certain characters and just makes the stories that much better. Did you ever watch the Clone Wars movie, the animated movie?
no, which is something I wanted to ask on this channel. When's the great time? When's the best time if I'm watching the show? Because I was the movie the last. Was the show done and then the movie, or
No,
is
the
there
movie was done first, and then the
and
show.
then the show?
If I'm understanding correctly,
Is the
yes.
timeline all?
Well, the Clone Wars show jumps from
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
like we talked last
it's
week.
not chronological. It jumps all over the place, in not just location but in time. Um, you can look up, go to Google and search chronological order for like the Clone Wars, and
Yeah,
you'll see the episodes are like mixed and matched. But and I think there's Clone Wars episodes that chronologically predate that movie, but I think that movie came out first and it kind of set the pace. I think they used it as kind of a teaser to see what kind of reception there was for this animated show, and I think there was enough interest for it, so
got it. Okay, so maybe I'll have to try
it's
to
not.
watch that.
You'll have to push through that movie.
Oh, is it kind of rough a little bit?
It's a little rough, but it's where you're first introduced to Ahsoka, where because I think it's in that movie where they introduce Ahsoka to Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Is that
Okay,
because so your first episode of Clone Wars, they're
they
already
were
together?
they were already master and apprentice,
Okay, yeah.
which
So that
which is another. Sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, so that like that definitely predates, or that movie is definitely supposed to be first, but like it doesn't really matter.
Okay. The the one thing in like I think the first episode they were calling I think other Jedi's too whatever there was conversations they're like oh Master Skywalker and I'm like he wasn't technically a master yet because
Right,
in the third movie it was towards
right,
the end of the war and they're like yeah we don't grant you master so I was
yeah.
like
Just pulling on the heartstrings. He knows he's not a master, but all of them calling him master.
like the little details I'm like no you didn't do that right
Right.
no
Yep. No, that's valid points for sure. Um, the the one thing I can't stand about that movie, the Clone Wars animated movie, going back to soundtracks, just
was it
the music
not
just doesn't really match Star Wars. Um, but the Clone Wars showed is a lot better.
Is
And
it
go ahead.
is it as bad as because we talked last week. I've seen two episodes of Acolytes, and it was like episode one and episode five, just because I think it was five, four or five, whatever episode they had the Wookiee Jedi. Because I
Yeah.
was like, I got to see this. This looks cool. Um, one of the episodes I was reviewing or like watching a review on it, they said like the ending soundtrack during like the
Oh,
credits was
it's
like
better than that. It's
it's
better
like
than that.
they're like, what is this? It's not, it doesn't even
It's
sound
hip
like
hop.
sci-fi Star Wars. Like
It's hip hop. It's that
it's
that
hip
and it's
hop. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, hip hop. So was it like someone like it was just like, what is this?
it wasn't that bad. Like
Okay. Okay.
this is actually like instrumental. I think it's instrumental, either that or it's all like computerized music. But it just it didn't. There's this one scene, which again, suspension of disbelief. So in this movie, their object this doesn't spoil anything. Their objective is to find, I think it's Jabba the Hutt's son. The Jabba the Hutt's son was captured, and they need to find it to because it's a setup for I might have to go back and watch this movie to say this correctly. But anyways, they're approaching where they believe Jabba the Hutt's son is. And you've got a bunch of like clone troopers, and you've got their like, their little vehicles that they're not
Oh,
AT-ATs, but they like look
yeah.
like beetles with like six legs or whatnot.
Yep. Yep.
So the location is like on top of this huge cliff. And so they shoot up all these like wires, and they're like climbing up this cliff like sideways, like vertically, like this. And this music kicks in, and it's like, and it's like,
As they're just walking up
yeah,
just
yeah.
slowly, like
It's like, and like I said, soundtrack is very important to me. That's one of the things that just hooked me line and sinker with the original trilogy. Like when that binary sunset scene with Luke looking out on the two suns of Tatooine, dun, 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 dun. It's like, man, all the feels you get when you see that. And then you get this dun, 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 dun. It's like, no, man, that's not fitting. That's not Star Wars, in my opinion. So,
but I totally get your point because there's like being a big movie fan, soundtrack and sound design really can make a movie that's mediocre
oh yeah,
to the next level if they have good sound design, whatever the actions. For example, like in Star Wars, the sound designs between the lightsaber, I
mm-hmm.
think, and the lightsaber crashing against each other, and
Yeah,
the sound design for like the woo woo, that sound design was created by someone just like having a wet finger and like I think like rubbing against like the edge of like a glass bowl or something that would make that noise. And
yeah,
when I heard that, I was like, okay, well, brilliant, because it sounds great. And then the lightsabers crashing against each other is pretty much taking two like broken cables that are live and hitting them against each other to make that kind of like that
sure.
type noise. So,
Yeah, I mean,
and then the soundtrack too, like I mean, I'm sure John Williams doesn't have time to make sound for a movie that he doesn't know if it's going to succeed or not because he's too
right.
busy making big other movies. But him and Hans Zimmer, there's
God.
other ones out there that like make great soundtracks for movies. When I say Hans Zimmer, I think he's one of my favorite because
Oh yeah,
all of Christopher Nolan movies that has Hans Zimmer he's killed it with the way he does the music for all of his movies.
did he do Gladiator?
Yep, he did
Yeah. Oh,
Gladiator. Yep,
one of my top three movies of all time. Gladiator is up there. Oh, and
really. Okay.
soundtrack. Yeah. Oh yeah, and
I
the
love the
soundtrack has a lot to do with it.
and I love the ending.
Yeah.
The ending soundtrack where
Mm-hmm.
you have I don't know what language she's speaking that's in that song, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It's the scene where he still has the his one buddy still has the two little like carved out rocks that are like
yeah,
his
not yet.
son and wife. And
Yeah.
then Patty's like, I'll see you in the afterlife. And then that song kicks in when it goes into the after credits.
Mhm.
Oh, that hits hard. Real hard.
I'm telling you, it's soundtrack that does that to you, man. Like that's what
All the
puts those
feels.
goosebumps on your arms. Is when they match that music or they match the sounds with the feeling you're supposed to have at that moment. And it's like, it's perfect. Yeah,
Yep.
that's why Gladiator is top three for me. But I think to your question, that language has to be like Italian, right?
I think you're right.
Or some Roman language that's
Yeah, I
not
think you're right.
Italian, because I feel like it would have to be. I could be wrong, but
And I've seen
and
it
they're coming out
trans.
with a Gladiator too. Hopefully they do it justice. But
I heard what's his name that was it Scorsese? Martin Scorsese, who made the first Gladiator?
love the interwebs. Who produced it or
Or who directed it?
who directed it? Who directed Gladiator? Ridley Scott.
Oh,
That's
Ridley
right.
Scott.
Well, of
Okay.
course, because it's what's his face? The actor that did Maximus. Because doesn't Ridley Scott have like what George Lucas was to Harrison Ford, Ridley Scott was to Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe. Okay, I was gonna say it's Russell someone. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I'd be intrigued to see what they go with Gladiator 2. It's supposed to take place with the
Isn't it the son
of
of
the daughter of
the
the king
the
or
sister to the emperor who got killed,
yes.
but it's that kid who's now grown up. Let's see who's direct. Ridley Scott returns to direct Gladiator
He's
2.
directing it. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean, it's intriguing, but he's also,
Oh, I
as we
should have
talked,
listened to Ta. Ta said Ridley Scott. Sorry, should have listened to you from the beginning.
sorry, Todd. The thing about I'm worried about is I don't know if Ridley Scott has lost his touch or not because I mean he created Alien, and as we
Yeah,
we talk about sci-fi, and then he made the Covenant and whatever the other one, and they
Prometheus.
had they had potential. I thought when watching the movie, and then there was moments where I'm just like, what the hell's going on?
Mhm.
So I'll be intrigued to see if he can pull it off for a sequel. And it also goes back to a lot of Hollywood now can't come up with something original. They gotta certainly gotta pull something out of the archive and be like, oh, let's make it a sequel. It's like, well,
I
okay.
I was going to ask you that earlier on in today's episode. You were talking along the lines of this, but what I want to ask you is, are people just not as creative these days?
I
Is are writers not having original thoughts, or do you think society has put such like barriers up that people are trying to be safe and not like, I'll just say it, not cause cancellation for whatever they create. So it's better to play it safe than sorry. What do you think? I know I have my opinion, but I'm curious to see what
I
you.
no, I think when your first point they were bringing it up, I was like, yeah, that's probably why. But no, your second point hits it even more that I think they have barriers and they want to play it safe. They want to make money in Hollywood. And what's the safest way? Well, let's look at something that was successful in the past. I mean, look at we just what last was it last weekend or the weekend before we had Beetlejuice, the second
Yep.
one.
Yep.
They're just pulling things left and right that might be nostalgic for, I guess, for one, people to go back into theaters. And how are you going to get
Yep.
people back into theaters? You got to get the older audience, and the older audience will bring their kids to those movies to make a profit.
Yep.
But we've had so many, I think all the like the newer content that or of movies that you see that you're like, well, this is new. It's not a sequel, it's not a prequel. People don't go to those. And I
Yep.
think, granted we can blame COVID all we want, but people don't, I think that kind of ruined it over the like what 2 year span where everything was anything new was just streaming. You could get it
Yep.
straight through whatever streaming service or Amazon Prime. You can pay a movie ticket, whether it's like 15, $20, but you're saving because you're not buying popcorn or anything. You got your own
Yep.
concessions in your own kitchen. So I think that's what's kind of hurt Hollywood and coming and being afraid to take that risk of coming up with something new
Which
and
is
creativity, and then having producers and whatnot that would back you up and say, "Hey, I kind of like that idea. We're going to sign on." I think that part is getting really, really They're playing it too safe.
which is unfortunate because I think it's when writers or artists push the boundaries is when they become the most impactful. Like, I mean, no one hit it big playing it safe. That you might be able to make do and still be afloat. But if and Star Wars to me is a franchise that is impactful. Like it's boom, it hits you, and it just hasn't been there. And I feel like people are just too afraid to push the boundary a little bit, or they're trying to check off certain boxes instead of creating a story that they actually want to tell. So, just my
Yeah, I
opinion.
totally agree. Totally agree.
um, so going back to the first three episodes of Clone Wars, uh, what are your thoughts on that so far? I know you mentioned you got to see Plo Koon a little more. Um, do you see or understand the aspect that Dustin and I were talking about from last week? Like you've got the moments or you got the things that you kind of have to push through with season one, but there
Yeah,
is
and
like some substance there.
yeah, it's tolerable to get through. I don't think it's. I mean, I'll see when I get through the whole first season. But I totally get what you guys brought up last week was like you get the droids and they're talking to each other and they're just like Roger, Roger, and I think the one episode is like it's my programming. I can't target very well or something.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, and like it was a little cheesy. And then witnessing the young Ahsoka being a teenager doing teenager type
annoying
attitude
things.
attitude moments
Yep.
where and then she like complains to like Anakin, and then Anakin like later on like deviates their mission, and she's like, "That's what I told us to we were gonna do." It's like you got to find the right place and the right time to say things to the right people, and then you just go do your own thing. So yeah, I was like, but I've liked that dynamic. It's kind
Sure.
of it's character development. So
Yeah.
so far I've enjoyed it. I don't think Ahsoka's been that annoying yet. I don't know if it gets worse or not, but definitely the droids. I was like, can they just can they just I don't know. They're
Not talk. Is
not
this
talk and just do
necessary?
their thing. Why do they have some sort of like intelligence? Because I thought they were just droids that are just like, hey,
Right.
you do that. That's your job. But they're sitting there like I can't find them, or they're saying things, and you're just like, what the? That, I thought droids are just droids. They're like Terminators. They just you build them and you give them mission, and
Right.
that's what they do. So, yeah, like you guys said last week, it'll get better. So, but I still
Yeah.
look forward. It's not that bad so far with the droids, but
Well, I mean, buckle up because you're about to go through one of the best Star Wars experiences you'll ever go through. You just don't realize it yet. And it just takes a while to get there. Um, there's two moments that I want you to let me know when you're at it. One of them is the Morbus trilogy. Um, I don't. I think I have to go back and look at the name of the episodes and everything because I think it alludes to that in the names of them. So I will watch those along with you as you're watching them. And then when you get to season seven, the final season, I definitely want to kind of watch a certain section of that while you watch that because there are some like badass moments in both of those. And extreme, like the Morbus trilogy, extremely relevant to what some of the stuff we're seeing now, meaning the Ahsoka show. And like I can speak more to it once you've actually seen it because I don't want to spoil anything. But when you get to that section and when you get to season seven, let me know and I'll kind of watch while you watch. Maybe not at the same time, but I'll relive it so that we can speak to it a little more. But but yeah, keep watching that show. It's going to get better. So many great stories that you're about to learn
I
about.
I
So
loved I loved the scene in the first one we had like I said I knew and you guys told me you're gonna see different Jedi's doing their own. We saw Plo Koon, but then the first episode you had Yoda with like three clones,
mm-hmm.
and they took on like a whole army of droids. That
Yeah,
scene, I was like, "Wow, that's awesome!" And there was a scene where like he kind of just sits there and just meditates, and they're like, the clones are like, "What's he doing?" Like
yeah,
they're on their way, and all of a sudden he like wakes up, and all of a sudden he like doing his little gymnastics, jumping around all over the place. I just want to know where does he put his little wooden cane when he does that? Is that cane secretly the just turns into a lightsaber, or because you know what I mean? Because all of a sudden later
Yeah.
on he's like, oh, and then all of a sudden when he's doing all that and they figure out, okay, kill all the droids or whatever, we better get going. We're going to be late, and he's just wobbling
Walking with
along
his
with his
cane.
cane.
It's a figment of all of our imagination. It's a force projection. No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding. I don't know.
right. And
But yeah, you'll
I think in the beginning too, because they were taking like he's like, well, that's where they're gonna expect us, so we're going this way. And the clones were like, okay. He's like, we better hurry up.
yeah.
And he's just walking like these clones could just overlap him, and all of a sudden he's just sitting there like,
Yeah.
I love that dynamic of Yoda. Just
And Asajj Ventress is in the episodes you've seen, right?
which one?
Asajj Ventress, the the woman with the two red
Oh,
lightsabers,
yep,
the villain.
yep.
She's another one of these characters that
That you'll learn more.
become very important and are like incredible, like the story arc for this person. Because I forget, did you say what are your thoughts on Dooku? Are you a big Dooku fan at all, or
Yeah, I want to know more of his backstory because I said I saw the Tales of the Jedi and I love the backstory. Qui-Gon was
Mhm.
his Padawan. I know he was a Padawan of Yoda, so that whole connection, I want to see more of that backstory. So
Yeah,
I do like I think Dooku was a very interesting character in the live action movies. It's just too bad he didn't get that much screen time.
yep,
But if Clone Wars is going to give that to me, I'm excited.
yeah. You're gonna get more Dooku, and Asajj Ventress plays a big part in that. Um, and there was a book that came out, Dark Disciple, and it was a very good book, and it was centered around Asajj Ventress and one other person I won't name because I don't want to make any spoilers or anything. Um, but fantastic book, one of the best Star Wars books I've read, and yeah, you'll get to learn some of all or a lot of this in the show you're watching. So
Okay.
it's good stuff, man. Um,
I look
keep
forward
us
to it.
up, keep us up, with what you're experiencing and seeing. And I mean, I love it. I love when people get to learn some of the stuff for the first time. So I'm definitely interested in your thoughts and opinions as you're going through this Clone Wars journey and then eventually Rebels, hopefully. So all right, well, I think I will start wrapping it up for today. See, look, 82 minutes. I can see it. Now, who would have thought we would have gone 82 minutes today? We were like, I
We're
don't
going
know.
in blind.
We're going in blind, but
Get the Jedi visor on and
yeah, we're going in blind. Can't see anything. We've got this little droid shooting shit at us, but hey, we've parried it for a while. So I will just speak through our social media handles really quick. So you can find us on Twitter at DetBlockAA23pod, on Instagram at detention_block_AA_23, and then our Facebook group and YouTube channel, Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. And of course, you can find us now on TikTok at DetBlockAA23. Bring us your likes, follows, downloads, hit that subscribe button. Again, it definitely helps us. Yeah, you always got to do this when you say the subscribe button. You got to do the if you're just listening to us, we're doing the arm motion where we're hitting the button or whatever. Any little thing you can do to help us out, we greatly appreciate it. It definitely goes a long way in putting our name out there amongst all the Star Wars channels. So with that, any final thoughts, Bogie? Any final comments
no,
on anything, not just Star Wars, just anything in general?
no. Border battle this weekend will be fun. Other than that, week two under the week two done. I made it.
You've
And
done a
you've
very
officially
good
told me
job.
I'm
You're
outside
out of your cell.
I've
You're
released
no longer
you've
detained.
released me out of my cell. Everything's fine down here. No.
And thank you, Todd. Thank you for going along the ride with us. He says 82 awesome minutes. So we greatly appreciate your dedication to those 82 minutes and speaking with us. So we look forward to talking with you next time as usual. So with that, have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your evening or, wherever you are in your day. And we look forward to talking with you next time on Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. Again, I'm Mike, joined by Bogie or Ben Ken Bogie. And as always, may the force be with you.